The ambulance sirens pierced through the quiet suburban afternoon as paramedics rushed toward Lincoln High School's gymnasium. Inside, 3 teenage girls sat huddled against the wall, their faces streaked with tears and their bodies trembling uncontrollably. One clutched her dislocated shoulder, another nursed what appeared to be a sprained wrist, and the third couldn't stop the blood flowing from her nose. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Standing calmly in the center of the gym, 17-year-old Maya Chun adjusted her school uniform and picked up her backpack as if nothing had happened. Her breathing was steady, her posture relaxed, and there wasn't a single mark on her. The only evidence that she'd been involved in any altercation was the slight crease in her perfectly pressed white shirt. "How did this happen?" whispered the school nurse as she tended to the injured students. But Maya had already walked out of the gymnasium, leaving behind only questions and 3 bullies who would never forget the lesson they'd just learned. 3 weeks earlier, Maya Chun had stepped off the Greyhound bus at the Cedar Valley terminal with nothing but a duffel bag, a worn leather satchel, and the weight of starting over in a completely new place. The September air carried the scent of autumn leaves and the promise of change, but Maya felt only the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach that came with being the new kid for the 4th time in 3 years. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Chun, had accepted a position at Cedar Valley General Hospital, and once again, Maya found herself uprooted from everything familiar. Portland, Sacramento, Phoenix, each city had been a temporary stop in their nomadic journey, and now Cedar Valley, Colorado, would be her new home. At least until her mother's restless spirit decided it was time to move again. The taxi ride to their new apartment took them through the heart of Cedar Valley, a picturesque mountain town where Victorian houses lined tree-shaded streets, and everyone seemed to know everyone else. It was the kind of place where secrets were hard to keep and outsiders were immediately noticed. Maya pressed her face against the window, watching teenagers her age walking home from school in clusters, their laughter echoing off the sidewalks. She wondered if she'd ever be part of a group like that, or if she'd remain on the outside looking in. As she had in every other town, their new apartment was a modest 2-bedroom unit in a converted Victorian house on Maple Street. The landlord, Mrs. Henderson, was a kind woman in her 70s who insisted on helping them carry their boxes upstairs, despite Maya's protests. As they climbed the narrow staircase, Mrs. Henderson chatted about the neighborhood, the local coffee shop, and how wonderful it was to have a doctor living in the building. "You'll love it here, dear," she said to Maya, slightly out of breath as they reached the landing. Cedar Valley has the best high school in the county. The teachers are wonderful, and the students are so well behaved. Nothing like those big city schools with all their problems. Maya forced a smile and nodded, but inside she felt the familiar dread. Every adult said the same thing about their school, and every time, Maya discovered that teenagers were the same everywhere, quick to form judgments, slower to accept differences, and always ready to establish their territory. That evening, as Maya unpacked her belongings in her new room, she carefully arranged her most precious possessions on the dresser. There was a photo of her and her father from 5 years ago, back when their family was still intact, before the divorce that had set her and her mother on this endless journey from city to city. Next to it, she placed her collection of judo medals, bronze, silver, and gold, each one representing years of dedication and discipline. Maya had started judo when she was 8 years old, shortly after her parents' separation, while other kids joined soccer teams or took piano lessons. Maya found solace in the structured world of martial arts. Her sensei, Master Tanaka, had become more of a father figure to her than her own dad, who now lived across the country and rarely called. Through judo, Maya had learned more than just physical techniques. She discovered inner strength, self-control, and the confidence that came from knowing she could defend herself if necessary. But Maya had also learned to keep her martial arts background to herself. In her experience, telling people about her judo training either made them treat her like a curiosity or challenge her to prove herself. Neither reaction was helpful when trying to blend in at a new school. So she'd made a rule: no one needed to know about her black belt, unless absolutely necessary. Her mother found her sitting on the bed, staring at the medals. Dr. Chun was still in her scrubs from her first day at the hospital, her long black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that made her look younger than her 42 years. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" her mother asked, settling down beside her on the bed. Maya shrugged. "Same as always. New school, new faces, same awkward introduction to the class where everyone stares at me like I'm some exotic animal." "Maya, you know we had to move. The opportunity here is incredible, and Cedar Valley is going to be different. It's smaller, more personal. People here actually care about each other. That's what you said about Phoenix and Sacramento and Portland." Maya's voice carried a weariness that seemed too heavy for someone her age. "I'm not blaming you, Mom. I know your career is important. I'm tired of always being the outsider." Dr. Chun put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "I know it's hard, sweetheart, but you're stronger than you think. You've handled every transition with such grace, and you've made friends in every city we've lived in." "Friends I had to leave behind," Maya said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it to even try anymore." "Of course it's worth it. You have so much to offer, Maya. You're intelligent, kind, talented. Any school would be lucky to have you as a student." Maya wanted to believe her mother's words, but experience had taught her that high school social dynamics were far more complicated than adult optimism suggested. She'd learned that being smart could make you a target, being different could isolate you, and being new meant starting at the bottom of an already established hierarchy. The next morning, Maya stood in front of the mirror in her new bedroom, adjusting her outfit for the third time. She'd chosen jeans and a simple navy blue sweater, nothing too flashy, nothing too plain, nothing that would draw unwanted attention. Her long black hair fell in natural waves past her shoulders, and she'd applied just enough makeup to look polished without appearing like she was trying too hard. As she walked the 6 blocks to Lincoln High School, Maya took in the details of her new neighborhood. Cedar Valley was undeniably beautiful, with the Rocky Mountains providing a dramatic backdrop to the Victorian architecture and tree-lined streets. The morning air was crisp and clean, so different from the smog and noise of the cities where she'd previously lived. Despite her apprehension, she found herself hoping that maybe, just maybe, this place would be different. Lincoln High School was an impressive brick building that looked like it had been built in the 1920s, with tall windows and ivy climbing up the walls. Students were streaming through the front doors, and Maya could hear the familiar sounds of teenage chatter and locker doors slamming. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked through the main entrance. The hallways were wider than she'd expected, with polished floors and display cases filled with academic and athletic trophies. Everything looked well-maintained and orderly, reinforcing Mrs. Henderson's comments about the school's reputation. Maya found her way to the main office, where a cheerful secretary named Mrs. Williams handed her a schedule and a map of the school. "Welcome to Lincoln High, Maya. I'm sure you're going to love it here. Your first class is a P. English Literature, with Mr. Peterson in room 204. It's just up the stairs and to the right. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to come back here." Maya thanked her and made her way upstairs, consulting the map and trying to memorize the layout. The hallways were filling up with students, and she could feel the familiar sensation of being observed. New students were always objects of curiosity, especially in smaller schools where everyone had known each other for years. Room 204 was easy to find, and Maya slipped inside just as the bell rang. Mr. Peterson was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a genuine smile who immediately made her feel welcome. The classroom was filled with about 25 students, all of whom turned to look at her as she entered. "Class, we have a new student joining us today. This is Maya Chun, and she's moved here from Phoenix. Maya, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?" Maya had given this introduction so many times that she had it memorized. "Hi everyone. I'm Maya, and I just moved here with my mom, who's a doctor at the hospital. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you and being part of the Lincoln High community." It was generic and safe, designed to be friendly without revealing anything that could be used against her later. She quickly scanned the faces in the room, noting the mix of curious, welcoming, and indifferent expressions. Most students seemed pleasant enough, but Maya had learned not to trust first impressions. Mr. Peterson directed her to an empty seat in the third row, and the class continued with their discussion of The Great Gatsby. Maya was relieved to discover that they were covering material she'd already studied in Phoenix, so she could participate in the discussion without embarrassing herself. A few students seemed impressed by her insights, and she began to feel cautiously optimistic about fitting in. After English, Maya consulted her schedule and headed to advanced biology. The hallways were crowded with students changing classes, and she had to navigate carefully to avoid bumping into anyone. As she walked, she overheard fragments of conversation. Weekend plans, complaints about homework, gossip about who was dating whom. It all sounded reassuringly normal. The biology classroom was in the basement, and Maya arrived a few minutes early. The teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, was setting up a microscope demonstration and greeted Maya warmly. As other students filed in, Maya chose a seat near the middle of the room, hoping to blend in with the crowd. That's when she first noticed them. 3 girls entered the classroom together, and their presence immediately changed the atmosphere. They moved with the confidence of people who were used to being the center of attention, and other students automatically made room for them. The leader was a tall blonde named Brittany Hawkins, whose perfectly styled hair and designer clothes marked her as someone from a wealthy family. To her right was Jessica Martinez, a petite brunette with sharp eyes and a smirk that suggested she enjoyed other people's discomfort. The third member of their group was Amanda Foster, a redhead whose expensive jewelry and manicured nails indicated that she came from similar privilege. Maya had encountered girls like this in every school she'd attended. They were the self-appointed queens of their social circles, the ones who decided who was worthy of acceptance and who deserved to be excluded. In Portland, it had been the theater kids who thought they were intellectually superior. In Sacramento, it had been the athlete clique who dominated through physical intimidation. In Phoenix, it had been the rich kids who used their parents' money as a weapon. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Here in Cedar Valley, it appeared to be a combination of wealth and social status, with Brittany clearly serving as the group's leader. Maya watched as they claimed seats in the front row, their conversation loud enough for everyone to hear as they discussed their weekend plans to go shopping in Denver. Maya told herself to stay invisible, to avoid drawing their attention. But as Ms. Rodriguez began taking attendance, calling out names alphabetically, Maya realized that her plan for anonymity was about to be shattered. "Maya Chun," Ms. Rodriguez called out. "Here," Maya responded, raising her hand slightly. The simple act of answering attendance caused all 3 girls to turn and look at her. Maya felt their eyes assessing her, taking in every detail of her appearance and filing away information for future use. She kept her expression neutral and focused on Miss Rodriguez, but she could feel the weight of their scrutiny. "Maya just transferred here from Phoenix," Ms. Rodriguez announced to the class. "I'm sure everyone will help her feel welcome." Brittany whispered something to Jessica, who snickered quietly. Amanda rolled her eyes and turned back to face the front of the classroom. It was a small interaction, barely noticeable to anyone else, but Maya recognized the signs. She'd just been marked as a person of interest by the school's social gatekeepers. The rest of biology class passed without incident, but Maya was acutely aware of the three girls' presence. She participated in the microscope lab, working with a friendly boy named David, who helped her identify the different cell structures they were supposed to observe. David seemed genuinely nice, asking her questions about Phoenix and offering to show her around the school. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to hope that maybe she could find her place among the more accepting students. But as the class ended and students began packing up their materials, Maya overheard a conversation that made her stomach drop. "Did you see her clothes?" Jessica whispered to Brittany, not bothering to lower her voice enough to prevent Maya from hearing. "I mean, Target is fine for some people, but did she really think she could just waltz in here and fit in?" "And that introduction," Amanda added with a laugh. "So rehearsed and fake. I'm looking forward to being part of the Lincoln High community. Who talks like that?" "Probably another scholarship kid whose parents can't afford to live in the nice part of town," Brittany said, gathering her designer handbag. "I heard her mom got a job at the hospital. You know how those people are. They move around constantly because they can't keep a job anywhere." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She wanted to turn around and tell them that her mother was a highly respected surgeon who chose to move for better opportunities, not because she couldn't hold a job. She wanted to point out that her clothes were perfectly fine and that there was nothing wrong with being practical about fashion. But she'd learned from previous experiences that defending herself only made things worse. Instead, she gathered her books and walked out of the classroom with as much dignity as she could muster. Behind her, she could hear the three girls laughing about something, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was the subject of their amusement. The hallway was crowded with students heading to their next classes, and Maya consulted her schedule to see that she had a free period. She decided to explore the school library, hoping to find a quiet place where she could collect herself and prepare for the rest of the day. The library was located on the second floor and was more impressive than Maya had expected. Tall windows let in natural light, and comfortable reading chairs were scattered throughout the space. A few students were studying quietly at tables, and Maya found an empty corner where she could sit and process what had just happened. She'd only been at Lincoln High for 2 hours, and already she'd attracted the attention of the school's mean girls. In her experience, this was either a very bad sign or simply par for the course. Every school had its social hierarchy, and new students were always tested to see where they fit in the pecking order. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through the messages from friends she'd left behind in Phoenix. There were photos from parties she'd missed, updates about classes she was no longer taking, and invitations to hang out that she could no longer accept. The familiar pang of loneliness hit her as she realized how completely she'd been disconnected from the life she'd been building. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Are you okay?" Maya looked up to see a girl about her age with curly brown hair and kind eyes. She was wearing a simple dress and carrying a stack of books that looked like they weighed more than she did. "I'm fine," Maya said automatically, then realized how unconvincing she sounded. "I mean, I'm just getting used to being the new kid." "Again, I'm Emma," the girl said, settling into the chair across from Maya. "Emma Thompson. I saw what happened in biology class." Maya felt her defenses go up. Nothing happened in biology class. "I know it might not seem like much, but I've been watching Brittany and her friends for 3 years. They have a pattern. They target new students, especially ones who might threaten their social status in any way." "I'm not trying to threaten anyone's social status," Maya said. "I just want to get through high school without any drama." Emma nodded sympathetically. "That's what we all want. But unfortunately, Brittany doesn't always give people that choice. She's decided that you're either going to be part of her group or you're going to be her enemy. And from what I overheard, It doesn't sound like she's planning to invite you to join her circle. Maya sighed and leaned back in her chair. Why does every school have to have girls like that? Can't people just mind their own business and focus on their own lives? You'd think so, but some people seem to get their power from making other people feel small, Emma said. The good news is that most of the students here are actually pretty nice. It's just that Brittany and her friends are loud enough to make it seem like they represent everyone. What do you know about them? Maya asked, curiosity getting the better of her desire to stay uninvolved. Emma glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then leaned forward slightly. Brittany's dad owns half the commercial real estate in town, and her mom is on the school board. Jessica's family runs the biggest car dealership in the county, and Amanda's parents are both lawyers. They've been best friends since elementary school, and they're used to getting whatever they want. Let me guess, they're also popular with the teachers and get away with everything. Pretty much. They're all honor roll students, they volunteer for school events, and they donate money to school programs. On paper, they look like model students. But they're also master manipulators who know exactly how to make someone's life miserable without leaving any evidence. Maya felt a familiar sinking feeling in her stomach. She'd dealt with girls like this before, but never ones who had such deep roots in the community. In previous schools, she'd at least had the advantage of knowing that her time there was temporary. But if Cedar Valley was going to be home for a while, she needed to find a way to coexist with the established social order. What do they usually do to people they don't like? Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Emma's expression grew serious. It depends on the person. Sometimes it's just exclusion, making sure you're not invited to parties, spreading rumors that use weird or stuck-up, convincing other people to avoid you. But if they really want to hurt someone, they can get creative. They've made kids transfer schools before. The bell rang, signaling the end of the free period, and students began gathering their belongings. Maya and Emma stood up, and Emma handed her a piece of paper with her phone number written on it. Look, I know we just met, but if you ever need someone to talk to or if things get bad, don't hesitate to reach out. I've seen what happens when people try to deal with Brittany's group alone, and it never ends well. Maya pocketed the paper and thanked Emma, genuinely touched by the kindness of a stranger. As they walked out of the library together, Maya felt a small spark of hope. Maybe Cedar Valley wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe she could find her people among the students who valued kindness over status. But as they reached the hallway, Maya's optimism was quickly deflated. Brittany, Jessica, and Amanda were standing near the lockers, and their conversation stopped abruptly when they saw Maya approaching. The three girls watched her with predatory smiles, like cats who had just spotted a particularly interesting mouse. Well, well, Brittany said loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. If it isn't our new friend from Phoenix. How are you settling in, Maya? Finding everything you need? There was something in her tone that made it clear the question wasn't friendly small talk. Maya recognized the challenge in Brittany's voice. This was a test, and her response would determine how the next phase of her high school experience would unfold. I'm doing fine, thank you, Maya replied evenly, not wanting to show any sign of weakness or fear. That's so wonderful to hear, Jessica chimed in with false sweetness. We were just talking about how nice it must be to get a fresh start in a new place. Leave all your old problems behind and reinvent yourself. I wasn't trying to escape any problems, Maya said, feeling the need to correct the implication. My mom got a job here, so we moved. It's pretty straightforward. Amanda stepped forward, her smile sharp and calculating. Of course. It's just that we've heard so many stories about kids who transfer schools because of difficulties, bullying, academic problems, family issues, that sort of thing. Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks. They were deliberately trying to embarrass her in front of the other students who were now watching the interaction with interest. She could see Emma hovering nearby, looking concerned, but not wanting to get involved. "I don't have any of those problems," Maya said firmly. "I'm here because my mother is a surgeon, and she was offered a position at Cedar Valley General. We move when she gets better career opportunities." "A surgeon?" Brittany raised an eyebrow with exaggerated surprise. "How impressive. I hope she's better at her job than she is at picking out clothes for her daughter." The comment hit its mark, and Maya felt her face flush with embarrassment. Several students in the hallway turned to look at her outfit, and she suddenly felt self-conscious about every choice she'd made that morning. Her jeans were from Target, her sweater was from an outlet store, and her shoes were practical rather than fashionable. In Phoenix, her style had been perfectly acceptable, but here in Cedar Valley, surrounded by girls wearing designer labels, she felt like she was wearing a sign that announced her family's middle-class status. "There's nothing wrong with my clothes," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, honey," Jessica said with mock sympathy, "there's nothing wrong with shopping at discount stores. We're not judging you. It's just that here in Cedar Valley, we have certain ... standards, but I'm sure you'll figure it out eventually." Maya realized that she was trapped in a no-win situation. If she defended herself, she'd look defensive and insecure. If she ignored them, she'd appear weak and vulnerable. If she fought back, she'd be labeled as aggressive and confrontational. She'd been in this exact scenario before, and there was no good way out. "I should get to class," Maya said, deciding that retreat was her best option. "Of course you should," Brittany said sweetly. "We wouldn't want you to be late on your first day. First impressions are so important, don't you think?" As Maya walked away, she could hear the three girls laughing behind her. Other students in the hallway were either staring at her with curiosity or avoiding eye contact altogether. The message was clear. Brittany and her friends had marked their territory, and Maya was now officially on their radar. Maya made it through the rest of her morning classes without any further incidents, but she could feel the weight of whispered conversations and curious glances following her through the hallways. By lunchtime, she was emotionally exhausted from the constant vigilance required to navigate a new social environment while dealing with the added pressure of being targeted by the school's queen bees. The cafeteria was a large, bright space filled with round tables and the typical chaos of teenage social dynamics. Maya got her lunch, a turkey sandwich and an apple, and looked around for somewhere to sit. She spotted Emma at a table with a few other students who looked like they might be part of the nice but not popular crowd, and Emma waved her over. "How's your first day going?" Emma asked as Maya sat down. "About as well as expected," Maya replied, unwrapping her sandwich. "I had another encounter with your friend Brittany between classes." "She's not my friend," Emma said quickly, "and I'm sorry. I should have warned you that she likes to corner new students in the hallways. It's part of her power play." The other students at the table introduced themselves. There was Marcus, a quiet boy who was apparently a genius at computer programming, Sarah, who was involved in the drama club, and Jason, who played in the school band. They all seemed genuinely nice, and Maya began to relax for the first time all day. But her moment of peace was short-lived. Halfway through lunch, Brittany and her entourage made their grand entrance into the cafeteria, and Maya could feel the energy in the room shift. Other students automatically made space for them, and conversations became more subdued, as if everyone was afraid of attracting unwanted attention. Maya tried to focus on her conversation with Emma and the others, but she was acutely aware of Brittany's table, which was positioned strategically in the center of the cafeteria where everyone could see and hear them. Their laughter seemed artificially loud, and their conversation was clearly designed to be overheard by as many people as possible. "So I was telling my mom about our new student." Brittany's voice carried across the cafeteria, and she was so concerned about the kind of families they're letting into the district now. "I mean, when you lower your standards, you have to expect a certain ... element." Maya's grip tightened on her sandwich, but she forced herself to keep eating and pretend she hadn't heard. Emma and the others at her table exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly aware of what was happening but unsure how to respond. I just hope the administration realizes that some people might not be a good fit for Lincoln High's academic and social environment, Jessica added, her voice equally carrying. It would be such a shame if one bad apple spoiled things for everyone else. Maya had heard enough. She stood up abruptly, gathering her lunch tray with more force than necessary. Emma reached out to stop her, but Maya shook her head. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "I just need some air." Maya left the cafeteria and found refuge in the courtyard outside, where a few students were sitting on benches enjoying the autumn sunshine. She sat down on an empty bench and tried to process what had just happened. It was clear that Brittany and her friends were escalating their campaign against her, and Maya wasn't sure how to respond. In her previous schools, she'd usually been able to fly under the radar until the bullies found more interesting targets. But something about Cedar Valley felt different. Maybe it was because the town was smaller and there were fewer new students to distract attention. Maybe it was because Brittany's group had more social power than the mean girl she'd encountered before. Or maybe it was because Maya was simply tired of running and starting over. As she sat in the courtyard, Maya found herself thinking about her judo training. Master Tanaka had always taught her that martial arts weren't just about physical techniques. They were about mental discipline, emotional control, and knowing when to fight and when to walk away. He'd also taught her that bullies relied on fear and intimidation, and that the best way to deal with them was to remain calm and confident. But Master Tanaka had never been a teenage girl trying to navigate high school social dynamics. He'd never had to worry about fitting in or making friends, or dealing with mean girls who used psychological warfare instead of physical confrontation. The lessons that worked in the dojo didn't always translate to the hallways of high school. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Master Tanaka's number. She hadn't spoken to him since leaving Phoenix, and she suddenly missed his steady presence and wise counsel. Without thinking too much about it, she pressed the call button. "Maya," his familiar voice was warm and welcoming. "How are you settling into your new home?" "Hi, Sensei. It's been challenging. Tell me what's troubling you." Maya found herself pouring out the whole story: the move to Cedar Valley, the encounter with Brittany and her friends, the feeling of being targeted and isolated on her very first day. Master Tanaka listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of understanding. "And the worst part is," Maya concluded, "I feel like I'm back at square one again. I thought maybe this time would be different, but it's the same story everywhere we go." "Maya, do you remember what I taught you about the difference between running away and strategic retreat?" Strategic retreat is when you withdraw to a better position, not when you abandon the fight entirely. Exactly. And what you're describing doesn't sound like strategic retreat. It sounds like you're allowing these girls to claim territory that rightfully belongs to everyone, including you. But what am I supposed to do? If I fight back, I'll just make things worse. If I ignore them, they'll keep escalating. There's no good option. There's always a good option, Maya. It just might not be obvious at first. Tell me, what do you think these girls want from you? Maya considered the question. I think they want me to leave. Or at least to know my place and stay out of their way. And what do you want? I want to go to school without being harassed. I want to make friends and have a normal high school experience. I want to feel like I belong somewhere. Those are reasonable goals. And they're not incompatible with standing up for yourself when necessary. But I can't use judo on them, Sensei. This isn't that kind of situation. Master Tanaka chuckled softly. Judo isn't just about throwing techniques, Maya. It's about using an opponent's energy against them, finding their weaknesses, and maintaining your own balance while disrupting theirs. Those principles apply to all kinds of conflicts, not just physical ones. Maya felt a spark of understanding. You mean I should think of this like a mental and emotional judo match? Exactly. These girls are using intimidation and social pressure as their weapons. They're expecting you to react with fear or anger, which will give them more ammunition to use against you. But what if you responded in a way they didn't expect? What if you remained calm and confident, refused to be intimidated, and turned their own tactics against them? I'm not sure I know how to do that. You have more strength than you realize, Maya. You've handled multiple moves, adapted to new schools, and maintained your academic performance through all of it. You've earned a black belt in judo, which requires discipline and perseverance that most people your age don't possess. You have the tools you need. You just need to trust yourself to use them. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. And Maya realized she needed to get back inside. Thank you, Sensei. I needed to hear that. Remember, Maya, a true martial artist never looks for a fight, but they never run from one either. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and trust that you have the right to take up space in this world. Maya hung up the phone feeling more centered than she had all day. Master Tanaka was right. She'd been approaching this situation as if she was powerless, but that wasn't true. She had skills, intelligence, and inner strength that Brittany and her friends couldn't take away from her. The question was how to use those assets effectively. As she walked back into the school building, Maya made a decision. She wasn't going to hide, and she wasn't going to let 3 bullies determine her high school experience. She was going to find her place at Lincoln High, make genuine friends, and show everyone, including herself, that she belonged there just as much as anyone else. She had no idea that within a few weeks, her judo training would be put to the test in ways she never could have imagined. But for now, she was content to know that she wasn't going to face whatever came next as a victim. She was going to face it as a fighter. Maya's resolve to stand her ground was tested sooner than she'd anticipated. The next morning, she arrived at school to find a small crowd gathered around her locker, whispering and pointing. As she approached, the students scattered like startled birds, leaving behind only the evidence of what had captured their attention. Someone had taped a handwritten note to her locker that read, "Lost, 1 fashion sense. If found, please return to the charity case in locker 247. Below it, in different handwriting, someone had added, "Maybe her mommy can perform surgery on her ugly face too." Maya carefully removed the notes, her hand steady despite the anger building in her chest. She'd expected something like this. It was classic mean girl behavior, designed to humiliate her publicly while maintaining plausible deniability. The handwriting was obviously disguised, and there would be no way to prove who had done it. Emma appeared at her side, breathing hard as if she'd run down the hallway. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I saw it when I got here and tried to take it down, but there were already people taking pictures with their phones." "It's fine," Maya said, though it clearly wasn't. "I expected something like this." "No, it's not fine. This is harassment, and you should report it to the administration." Maya almost laughed at the suggestion. "And tell them what? That someone wrote a mean note? They'll just say it's typical teenage drama and that I need to learn to fit in better." Emma looked frustrated but couldn't argue with Maya's logic. They both knew that proving who had written the notes would be impossible, and even if they could, the punishment would likely be minimal compared to the social consequences of being labeled a snitch. As they walked to first period together, Maya became aware of the whispers following them down the hallway. Students who had seemed friendly the day before now avoided eye contact, as if her status as a target was somehow contagious. The message was clear. Associating with Maya might put them in Brittany's crosshairs as well. In English class, Mr. Peterson was discussing the symbolism in The Great Gatsby, but Maya found it hard to concentrate. She could feel Brittany's eyes on her from across the room, and every time she glanced in that direction, she was met with a smug smile that made her want to throw something. During the discussion of the green light at the end of Daisy's dock, Brittany raised her hand with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Mr. Peterson, don't you think the green light represents false hope? Like when people chase after things that are completely out of their reach because they don't understand their place in society." The comment was obviously directed at Maya, and several students turned to gauge her reaction. Mr. Peterson, oblivious to the subtext, praised Brittany's insight and encouraged her to elaborate. "Well," Brittany continued, warming to her theme, "Gatsby thought he could just show up and insert himself into East Egg society, but he didn't understand that some people will never truly belong, no matter how hard they try to pretend they fit." Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she forced herself to remain calm. Two could play this game, and she'd read The Great Gatsby twice before. She raised her hand. "Actually, Mr. Peterson, I think the green light represents the American dream, the idea that anyone can reinvent themselves and achieve success through hard work and determination. Gatsby's tragedy isn't that he didn't belong, but that the people who were born into privilege were too narrow-minded to accept him." The classroom fell silent as students recognized the verbal chess match taking place. Mr. Peterson looked pleased by the intellectual engagement, completely missing the personal warfare being conducted through literary analysis. "Both excellent interpretations," he said. "The beauty of Fitzgerald's symbolism is that it works on multiple levels." Brittany's smile had frozen on her face, and Jessica shot Maya a look that could have melted steel. Maya had just used their own weapon against them, demonstrating that she could match them intellectually while making the point about acceptance and prejudice that everyone in the room understood. After class, Maya gathered her books and headed for the door, but Brittany's voice stopped her in the hallway. "That was very clever in there, Maya, using literature to make your little speeches. But you might want to remember that real life isn't a book, and some stories don't have happy endings." Maya turned to face her, keeping her voice level and calm. "You're right, Brittany. Real life isn't a book. In real life, people eventually see through fake personas and judge others by their actions rather than their bank accounts." It was a direct hit, and Maya could see it land. For just a moment, Brittany's confident mask slipped, revealing something uglier underneath. But she recovered quickly, her smile returning like armor snapping back into place. "We'll see about that," Brittany said sweetly. "Cedar Valley is a very small town, Maya. People here have long memories, and they don't like troublemakers." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Brittany wasn't just talking about high school social dynamics. She was reminding Maya that her family's influence extended throughout the community. In a small town, the wrong people could make life difficult in ways that went far beyond school hallways. Maya's next class was a P history with Mrs. Patterson, a no-nonsense teacher in her 50s who had a reputation for running a tight ship. Maya slipped into the classroom and took a seat near the back, hoping to avoid further confrontations for the rest of the morning. But as other students filed in, Maya noticed something troubling. The seats around her remained empty, even as the classroom filled up. Students who might have sat nearby chose spots farther away, leaving a conspicuous buffer zone around her desk. The social quarantine had begun. Mrs. Patterson launched into a lecture about the causes of World War I, and Maya tried to focus on taking notes. But she couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that came from being surrounded by empty seats. In just 2 days, she'd gone from being the curious new student to being persona non grata. Halfway through the class, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it discreetly and felt her stomach drop. Someone had created a group chat called Lincoln High Alerts and added what appeared to be most of the junior class. The message thread was already active. Warning: new girl Maya thinks she's better than everyone. Did you see her trying to show off in English? So desperate. My mom says her family doesn't even live in the good part of town. Why do people like that even come here? Can't they go to public school where they belong? Maya, turned off her phone and tried to focus on the lecture, but the damage was done. Someone, undoubtedly Brittany or one of her friends, had weaponized social media to spread their campaign against her. By the end of the day, hundreds of students would have seen those messages, and Maya's reputation would be effectively destroyed. The isolation became more pronounced at lunch. When Maya approached the table where Emma and her friends were sitting, she could see the conflict in their faces. Emma looked genuinely sorry, but Marcus, Sarah, and Jason seemed uncomfortable, as if they were weighing the social cost of association. "Hey Maya," Emma said quietly. "How's your day going?" "Oh, living the dream," Maya replied, trying to inject some humor into the situation. Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly. "Listen, Maya, we saw the group chat messages. That's really messed up what they're doing to you." But Maya could hear the qualification coming. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "But we have to be careful too. My parents are trying to get me into Stanford, and I can't afford to have any drama on my record. If the wrong people decide I'm a troublemaker." "I understand," Maya said, and she genuinely did. She couldn't ask other students to sacrifice their own futures to support someone they'd known for 2 days. "I don't want to cause problems for anyone." Emma looked frustrated with her friends but didn't argue. The reality was that in a small town like Cedar Valley, social connections mattered for college recommendations, job opportunities, and family business relationships. Standing up to the local power structure could have consequences that extended far beyond high school. Maya ate her lunch in relative silence, listening to the others discuss an upcoming chemistry test and weekend plans that didn't include her. She wasn't angry with them. She understood the social calculus they were making. But she also realized that she was more isolated than she'd initially thought. After lunch, Maya had pay with Coach Williams, a former college basketball player who believed in the character-building power of physical activity. Maya had always enjoyed PE classes because they provided a temporary escape from academic and social pressures. Physical challenges she could handle. It was the emotional warfare that exhausted her. The class was playing volleyball, and Maya found herself on a team with several students she didn't know well. At first, everything seemed normal. Her teammates passed her the ball, she rotated through positions, and they functioned as a cohesive unit. But as the game progressed, Maya noticed subtle changes. Passes that should have come to her went to other players instead. When she called for the ball, her teammates acted as if they hadn't heard her. On defense, no one covered for her when she moved to make a play, leaving obvious gaps in their formation. The other team, which included Jessica and Amanda, began targeting Maya specifically. They spiked balls directly at her, served to her corner repeatedly, and celebrated with excessive enthusiasm whenever they scored a point off her. Coach Williams either didn't notice the coordinated effort or chose to ignore it. Maya's frustration mounted as the game continued. Her teammates passive-aggressive. Exclusion was almost worse than outright hostility because it was harder to address directly. She couldn't complain about not getting past the ball without sounding petty, and she couldn't prove that the targeting was intentional rather than coincidental. During a timeout, Maya overheard Amanda talking to one of her teammates. "I heard she thinks she's some kind of athlete. Maybe we should test that theory." When play resumed, Amanda served the ball with unusual force directly at Maya's face. Maya's judo training kicked in automatically. She ducked and rolled, avoiding the ball entirely and coming up in a defensive crouch that looked far more athletic than anything her classmates had expected. The gym fell silent for a moment as everyone processed what they'd just seen. Maya's movement had been fluid, controlled, and unmistakably trained. She wasn't just another awkward teenager trying to avoid getting hit. She moved like someone who knew how to handle herself in physical confrontations. "Nice reflexes, Coach," Williams called out, and Maya could hear the surprise in his voice. "You play sports at your old school?" "Something like that," Maya replied. straightening up and trying to downplay what had just happened. But the damage was done. Amanda's attempted humiliation had backfired, revealing that Maya wasn't the easy target they'd assumed her to be. The other students were looking at her with new interest, and Maya could see calculations being made behind their eyes. After pay, Maya changed back into her regular clothes and headed to her final class of the day, advanced chemistry with Dr. Martinez. She was looking forward to losing herself in the concrete world of molecular structures and chemical equations, where social dynamics couldn't interfere with objective reality. But as she entered the classroom, Maya discovered that Brittany's influence extended even into academic settings. Dr. Martinez was announcing lab partnerships for their upcoming semester project, and Maya realized with growing alarm that she was the only student without a partner. "It looks like we have an odd number," Dr. Martinez said, consulting his roster. "Maya, you'll need to join one of the existing pairs to form a group of 3. Maya looked around the classroom, but every pair seemed to suddenly become very interested in their notebooks. No one made eye contact, and no one extended an invitation. The message was clear. She wasn't welcome in anyone's group. After an uncomfortable silence, Dr. Martinez intervened. "Maya, you can work with Jennifer and Kyle." Jennifer Chun, no relation, despite the shared surname, and Kyle Morrison. Looked like they'd rather be assigned to clean the school bathrooms, but they couldn't refuse a direct instruction from their teacher. Maya gathered her materials and moved to their lab station, trying to ignore the awkwardness. "So," Kyle said with forced enthusiasm, "I guess we're a team now." "We'll make it work," Maya replied diplomatically. Jennifer had remained silent during the exchange, but Maya could see her shooting glances toward Brittany's lab station. The social pressure was clearly affecting her comfort level, and Maya suspected that working with the school pariah wasn't going to improve her standing with the popular crowd. As Dr. Martinez explained their semester project, a comprehensive analysis of water quality in local streams, Maya tried to focus on the academic requirements. The project would involve fieldwork, data collection, and a presentation to the class. It was exactly the kind of hands-on learning that Maya enjoyed, and she found herself genuinely excited about the scientific aspects. "We'll need to choose a local water source to study," Dr. Martinez continued. "I have a list of approved locations, including several streams in the Cedar Valley Nature Preserve." Maya's hand shot up before she could stop herself. "Dr. Martinez, are we allowed to suggest alternative locations if we can provide scientific justification?" "Certainly. What did you have in mind?" "Well, I was reading about the old mining operations in the area, and I thought it might be interesting to test water sources that might have been affected by historical industrial activity. It could provide a really good contrast to pristine natural areas." Dr. Martinez looked intrigued. "That's an excellent idea, Maya. Do you have specific locations in mind?" "I'd need to do more research, but I think there are some abandoned mine sites up in the hills that might have interesting water chemistry." The teacher nodded approvingly. "I like your way of thinking. Environmental remediation is a growing field, and understanding the long-term impacts of industrial activity is very relevant to current environmental policy." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction as several students in the class looked impressed despite themselves. She might be socially isolated, but she could still demonstrate her academic capabilities. Jennifer and Kyle seemed genuinely surprised by her knowledge and enthusiasm, but as the class ended and students began packing up their materials, Maya overheard Brittany's voice carrying across the room. "Some people will do anything to get attention, won't they? Even if it means making everyone else's project more complicated." The comment was designed to reframe Maya's academic engagement as attention-seeking behavior, and Maya could see its effect on her classmates. What should have been recognition for good thinking was now suspect, viewed through the lens of Brittany's narrative about Maya being desperate for approval. Maya gathered her books and headed for her locker, emotionally drained from a day of constant social warfare. As she walked through the hallways, she could feel the weight of whispered conversations and sideways glances. The group chat campaign had been effective. She was now officially marked as someone to avoid. At her locker, Maya found another note, this one tucked through the ventilation slats. It was printed rather than handwritten, making it even more difficult to trace. Go back where you came from. Nobody wants you here. Maya crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, but the message had hit its mark. She was starting to feel like maybe Emma's friends had the right idea. Maybe the smart thing was to keep her head down, avoid making waves, and try to survive the next 2 years without attracting any more attention. But as she walked home through the tree-lined streets of Cedar Valley, Maya found herself thinking about Master Tanaka's words about strategic retreat versus abandonment. Was she making a tactical withdrawal to regroup, or was she giving up the fight entirely? The question became more complicated when she arrived home to find her mother waiting in the kitchen with a concerned expression and a cup of tea. "How was your second day, sweetheart?" Dr. Chun asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "It was fine," Maya said automatically. "Maya, I got a call from the school today. Apparently, there's been some kind of social media situation involving you and some other students." Maya's heart sank. "What kind of call?" "The guidance counselor, Mrs. Foster, wanted to make me aware that there had been some interpersonal challenges, and to let me know that the school is monitoring the situation. She suggested that it might be helpful for you to meet with her to discuss strategies for successful integration into the school community." The euphemistic language couldn't disguise what had happened. Someone had escalated the situation to the administration, and now Maya was being positioned as the problem that needed to be managed. She suspected that Brittany's mother, with her school board connections, had orchestrated the call to establish a narrative where Maya was the disruptive influence. "Mom, they're trying to make it sound like I'm the one causing problems, but I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just trying to go to school and mind my own business." Dr. Chun sat down across from her daughter, her expression serious. "Tell me, what's really been happening?" Maya found herself recounting the past 2 days in detail. The targeted comments, the social media campaign, the isolation tactics, and the subtle but persistent harassment. Her mother listened without interrupting, her medical training evident in the way she absorbed information and asked clarifying questions. "This is unacceptable," Dr. Chun said when Maya finished. "I'm going to call the school and demand that they address this harassment immediately." "Mom, no. That will only make things worse. If they think I can't handle my own problems, it'll just give them more ammunition to use against me." "Maya, you shouldn't have to handle systematic bullying on your own. That's what adults are for. But it's not that simple in high school. If I run to my mommy every time someone is mean to me, I'll never recover from that reputation. I need to find a way to deal with this myself." Dr. Chun looked frustrated, and Maya could see the internal conflict between her protective instincts as a mother and her respect for her daughter's independence. They'd had similar conversations before, during their previous moves, and Maya had always managed to navigate the social challenges eventually. "At least meet with the guidance counselor," her mother said finally. "Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you need to have your version of events on record. If this escalates, you want documentation that shows you tried to handle things through proper channels." Maya reluctantly agreed, though she suspected that Mrs. Foster, who shared a surname with Amanda, might not be the neutral party her mother hoped for. In a small town, family connections could compromise even professional relationships. That evening, Maya tried to focus on her homework, but her mind kept wandering to the events of the day. She'd held her own in the verbal sparring with Brittany, demonstrated her academic capabilities in chemistry class, and shown that she wasn't physically intimidated by their volleyball tactics. But none of those small victories seemed to matter in the face of the larger Social campaign being waged against her. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through the Lincoln High Alerts group chat, which had grown to include nearly 200 students. The messages had evolved from general warnings about her to more specific allegations. I heard she was kicked out of her last school for fighting. Someone said her family doesn't even have a permanent address. My dad knows the doctor who hired her mom. Apparently they were desperate because no one else wanted the job. Each lie built on the previous ones, creating a narrative that was becoming increasingly difficult to combat. Maya could correct individual misconceptions, but she couldn't address a coordinated disinformation campaign that was reaching hundreds of students simultaneously. As she was reading the messages, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is just the beginning. Drop out now and save yourself the embarrassment." Maya stared at the message, feeling a chill run down her spine. The harassment was now extending beyond school hours and into her personal space. Someone was escalating the conflict, and Maya realized that she was facing a more organized and determined opposition than she'd initially understood. She thought about Master Tanaka's lessons on reading an opponent's intentions and capabilities. Brittany and her friends weren't just engaging in typical teenage mean girl behavior. They were conducting a systematic campaign designed to destroy her reputation and force her to leave the school. The fact that they were willing to involve parents, administration, and social media suggested that they viewed her as a serious threat to their social order. Maya sat on her bed, looking at her judo medals and thinking about the principles that had guided her training. In judo, you didn't win by being stronger than your opponent. You won by using their own force against them, finding their weaknesses, and maintaining your balance while disrupting theirs. For the first time since arriving in Cedar Valley, Maya began to seriously consider what it would look like to stop playing defense and start playing offense. She'd been trying to avoid conflict, but maybe conflict was inevitable. Maybe the only way to end this harassment was to demonstrate that she wasn't the easy target they thought she was. Maya pulled out a notebook and began writing down everything she knew about Brittany, Jessica, and Amanda. Their schedules, their friends, their families, their vulnerabilities. If they wanted to play psychological warfare, she needed to understand the battlefield and identify their weaknesses. But even as she planned, Maya felt a nagging doubt about the path she was considering. Master Tanaka had always taught her that martial arts should be used only for self-defense, never for aggression. Was fighting back against social bullying a form of legitimate self-defense? Or was she just looking for an excuse to use her skills against people who had hurt her? The question would haunt her for the rest of the evening, as Maya tried to find the line between protecting herself and becoming the very thing she despised. She didn't know it yet, but within a few days, that line would be tested in ways she never could have imagined. 3 weeks after the gymnasium incident, Maya sat across from Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the district's conflict resolution specialist. The office was deliberately calming, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs designed to encourage honest conversation. "Maya, I want you to know that what happened in that gym has sparked some serious conversations about bullying prevention in our district," Dr. Martinez said, reviewing the file in front of her. "But I also need to understand your perspective on how things escalated to that point." Maya took a deep breath. "The past month felt like a lifetime ago. I never wanted it to come to that. I tried everything else first." "Tell me about those other attempts." "I ignored them. I avoided them. I tried reasoning with them. I even went to Mrs. Foster for help, but she basically told me that I needed to try harder to fit in. When they cornered me in the gym and started getting physical, the security footage shows that Jessica Martinez pushed you first and that Amanda Foster grabbed your backpack. At what point did you decide to defend yourself?" Maya remembered that moment with crystal clarity. After weeks of psychological warfare, Brittany and her friends had finally made a critical error. They'd escalated to physical confrontation in a location with security cameras. When Brittany told me that if I didn't transfer schools voluntarily, they would make sure I had an accident that would force me to leave. That's when I realized this wasn't going to stop until someone made it stop. Dr. Martinez nodded. What happened next was captured on camera, but I'd like to hear your version. Maya closed her eyes, remembering the rush of adrenaline and the sudden calm that had settled over her as years of judo training took over. Jessica shoved me toward the gym wall. I used her own momentum against her basic judo principle. She went down harder than I expected and dislocated her shoulder. Amanda tried to grab me from behind, so I executed a simple wrist control technique. Her sprain was because she fought against it instead of going with the movement. And Brittany? She came at me swinging. I blocked her punch and countered with what we call a gentle throw. It looks dramatic, but it's designed to be safe. Her bloody nose was from hitting the mat wrong, not from anything I did intentionally. Dr. Martinez made notes as Maya spoke. The investigation supports your account. All 3 girls confirmed that they initiated physical contact, and the security FOOTAG clearly shows you responding defensively rather than aggressively. What's going to happen to them? Jessica and Amanda are facing suspension and mandatory counseling. Brittany's situation is more complicated because of the documented pattern of harassment leading up to the incident. She's being transferred to Westfield Academy, and her mother has resigned from the school board. Maya felt a mix of relief and sadness. She'd never wanted to destroy anyone's life, but she also couldn't ignore the impact their campaign had had on hers. The district is implementing new anti-bullying protocols based on what happened here, Dr. Martinez continued. Anonymous reporting systems, better training for staff to recognize psychological harassment, and clear consequences for social media bullying. In a way, your situation has helped protect other students who might face similar challenges. After the meeting, Maya walked through the halls of Lincoln High with a strange sense of déjà vu. Students still looked at her, but the nature of their attention had fundamentally changed. Instead of whispered rumors and social isolation, she encountered a mixture of respect, curiosity, and sometimes fear. Emma met her at her locker, grinning widely. So how did it go with Dr. Martinez? Better than expected. I think this whole thing might actually be over. Are you kidding? Maya, you're a legend now. Do you know how many students have wanted to stand up to Brittany's group over the years? You did what the rest of us were too scared to do. Maya wasn't sure how she felt about being legendary for a physical confrontation, but she couldn't deny that the atmosphere at school had improved dramatically. The group chat attacks had stopped, the social isolation had ended, and several students had approached her to apologize for their previous behavior. I heard from Marcus that 3 different students reported bullying incidents this week using the new anonymous system. Emma continued, people feel like they can speak up now. During lunch, Maya noticed that the cafeteria dynamics had shifted. Instead of one dominant table controlling the social atmosphere, students seemed more relaxed and willing to mix between different groups. The fear-based hierarchy that had defined the school's social structure was beginning to crumble. David, from biology class, approached their table with his lunch tray. Mind if I sit here? I wanted to thank you for what you did. Brittany's friends made my freshman year hell, but I was too intimidated to say anything. As more students joined their table, Maya realized that she'd inadvertently created something she'd never had before, a genuine community of people who chose to be together based on shared values rather than social status or fear. That afternoon, Maya received a call from Master Tanaka. Word of the incident had somehow reached him through the judo community, and he wanted to check on her. I heard you had to use your training in a real-world situation, he said without preamble. I tried everything else first, Sensei. Just like you taught me. I know you did, Maya. I'm proud of how you handled yourself. You showed restraint, used appropriate force, and protected not just yourself but other potential victims. That's what martial arts is really about. I keep wondering if I could have found another way. Sometimes there isn't another way. Sometimes bullies only understand strength, and showing them that strength prevents greater harm in the future. You didn't seek out this confrontation, you ended it. 2 months later, Maya stood in the gym that had been the site of her confrontation, but this time she was wearing a GI instead of a school uniform. Word of her judo background had spread, and several students had expressed interest in learning martial arts. Maya had volunteered to start an after-school judo club, with Master Tanaka's remote guidance and Coach Williams as the faculty sponsor. Remember, Maya told the dozen students gathered around her, judo isn't about fighting. It's about discipline, respect, and understanding how to use force responsibly. The goal is never to hurt someone. It's to protect yourself and others when necessary. Among her students were several kids who had been bullied in the past. Few who admitted they had been bullies themselves and wanted to change, and others who were simply interested in learning self-defense. The diversity of the group reflected the broader changes happening at Lincoln High. As the session ended and students bowed out according to traditional etiquette, Emma approached Maya with a thoughtful expression. You know what's funny? You came here trying to blend in and avoid attention, but you ended up changing the entire school culture. Maya considered this as she folded her go. I guess sometimes you have to stop trying to fit into a broken system and start working to fix it instead. That evening, Maya sat in her bedroom, looking at the judo medals on her dresser. Next to them sat a framed photo from the first judo club meeting, showing her surrounded by smiling students who had found their own path to confidence and self-respect. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Dinner in 5 minutes. And, Maya, I got confirmation today that my contract has been extended for another 3 years. We're staying in Cedar Valley. For the first time in years, the prospect of staying in one place didn't fill Maya with anxiety. She'd found something in Cedar Valley that had been missing from every other place. They'd lived a sense of belonging that came not from conforming to existing social structures, but from having the courage to stand up for what was right. Maya had learned that sometimes the most important battles aren't won by avoiding conflict, but by facing it with wisdom, courage, and the strength to protect not just yourself, but everyone who comes after you. In defending herself, she defended them all. The bullies had called her horrible names, but Maya had answered with action, integrity, and the kind of strength that transforms not just individuals, but entire communities. And in the end, that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.